Okay, we're recording. Why don't you introduce yourselves and tell me where you're from originally, and if you want to state the year you were born, tell me the year you're born, and then I'll ask you a question from there.
All right, Lilo, you
Yeah.
tell her first.
Well, um, I I was born in Speyer on the Rhine. It was a little town, about at that time 28,000. It was the town had changed very little since the Middle Ages. They still had old parts of the tower, and the one large the cathedral that was the largest, not the Gothic, it was
Roman?
a Roman cathedral, but it was built partly, the old part was on one side, and the new part, the French had in the Middle Ages burned it down. On that we had a new part built on. And it was famous, as I said before, another time, quite a number of the old German Kaiser and their wives and even their children were buried in the cathedral.
I just want to add that
Yeah.
the Habsburg family, they're all buried there, and they were very famous. They came all from Vienna. Now, I'm Susi, I'm the little sister, because we have considerable, about 6-year difference, and I was always the little girl that schlepped along
Right.
with the sister. I had to go as the protector, or
The protector,
the
when we didn't take her, when our dates, she says, I will tell if you don't take me.
That's right. I was the sister. Now, we had a wonderful time in Speyer because we used on Sundays, we would all go on our bicycle. We all would ride the bicycle, and that was the Sunday outing. You would go to the Wald, and you would bring a picnic along, and we had a very nice, the whole family, our mother Betty and Edward, and our brother Kurt, and Lilo and Susie, and we all would go, and it was a very nice day.
Tell me.
In the summertime, we would go swimming instead. We wouldn't go to the Wald, we would go to the Schwimmschule. That was an old-fashioned swimming, like a swimming pool, and it was right next to the most beautiful old bridge that had to be opened by hand every time any of the ships would come through, especially when a tugboat would come with some of the barges, and that would go upstream. You see, the current in the Rhine is very strong, so the barges go very slowly. And
They
we
came as far away as Basel, along the Rhine.
Yeah, all along the Rhine, they would go that way, all the way upstream. Now the good swimmers, we would jump off the swimming pool and swim across to the barges and climb up on those barges, let the barge take us upstream for a few miles, and then we would very leisurely swim down the Rhine and get back. But it was a very dangerous
It was.
way of doing it, but when you're young, nothing is dangerous, and you enjoy those. It was quite an experience.
Did just the kids do this, or was this something that
Yeah.
you're...
Mostly the kids,
Mostly
all the children, the good swimmers. I was always a good swimmer. I would jump off every diving board that was available. And that's it. And Lilo and Kurt, and we would do those things together.
Tell me a little bit about Kurt, your brother Kurt.
Well,
Kurt was very sporty too, and he went to the same school as I did, and our father was the first who went to that school.
to the Realschule.
Here too. And then our cousin Fritz, we liked very much, and he was very good at the school too. And then I came, I did all right, but not as well as Fritz. Fritz had finished school when I started. I was the first time that girls could
Be permitted.
we were permitted in Bavaria to enter
Boys' school.
boys' schools. So my girlfriend Edith, I'm still friendly today. She is a doctor in Sweden. And my other girlfriend Margaret, we three, we decided to go to the boys' school. And we did all
You were
right.
admitted.
We were
Now,
admitted.
I was the little girl who went to the Höhere Töchterschule. That was girls only. All those schools were just about around the corner from where we lived.
Right.
So it was very easy to walk to school.
And next to the prison.
And next to the prison, that's right, we had a prison. It was like a circle. There was the Realschule, the Höhere Töchterschule, and the prison, that was all. And we were right next, we could look into the prison.
could, from our garden, up where the prisoners were. It was not such a small prison. It was a pretty good sized prison.
But I like to mention something about the beautiful garden we had. We had a very big, first we had a very big courtyard. You walked through the courtyard, and around the courtyard we had all the factories, which was a hub where we baled the hubs. And then to the left you would go into our garden, which was a tremendous garden, and we grew everything, strawberries, wonderful trees of walnuts, the most unusual walnuts. They were the giant walnuts, not little walnuts. Then we had pears and apples and apricots and everything. In the afternoon we had like a cafe in the garden. And we were served. Anna, our maid of 20 years and more, she would come, she would bring us some cafe, and we had the fruit fresh. I picked it right fresh from the trees, whatever was ripe at the time. And that was like an afternoon, whenever we were home, an afternoon leisure time. And we had a nice little fountain where we had 2 ducks that used to swim in the fountain.
Lina and Krieg.
Yeah,
And
schlick, schlick.
we were so fun that duck was never killed.
The most
And
wonderful
then-
part, we had Peter, the dog.
Yeah.
And the dog was very friendly with Schlick Schlick, a very unusual situation. When we brought food for the dog, that I would call Schlick Schlick, Schlick Schlick would come running, eat the food, the dog would sit next to her, let her eat whatever she wanted, and then the duck would go away, and then the dog would eat his food, and they would live together in the doghouse. That was the most
Right.
unusual friendship.
And the sad thing was, when one of the ducks died, and the other one looked in the cellar window where and saw she's still around.
How she saw the mirror.
The
She saw
mirror.
the mirror and saw
Yeah.
that the duck was still there. She
Still
would talk
there.
to her own mirror. It was a very unusual friendship of animals. The animals are so clever. We don't appreciate anything what
You-
happens.
You have another animal story about the stork?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
on our chimney we had storks coming every year, and
every
they were
spring.
every spring, and they were the same storks, and they would have their babies there.
I don't know if it, I think it was the same couple. They were, didn't let anybody else come on the nest. They built a nest which our father had fortified on the chimney, that the storks had room to build, and that the smoke of the chimney went underneath.
that they weren't damaged from the smoke, because we had the fumes from the sulfur fumes
The sulfur.
in order to dry the hops, that the sulfur fumes
It's a
shouldn't
kiln.
damage
That was
the dog. The
our
the
grandfather built a kiln to dry the hops before they were packed again in hop sacks. Hop sacks are very large.
bales,
Yeah.
square bales, and they would
Yeah.
be shipped all over the world.
And then, so
Yeah.
what happened to the stork? Didn't the stork?
The storks stayed there until Hitler came, the Nazis. The Nazis cut off our chimney because it
I
was
don't
too
know.
high. Oh yes, it was too
I
high
thought
for the airplanes to cross. And they chopped off our chimney, and from that day on, no more storks. The storks would not come because the chimney wasn't high enough, and we could never be able to see them after that.
Oh, that's
That was
new.
in 1933, they chopped off the chimney. I
That's new
remember.
for me. I thought the man who bought our house
Oh
after the
no,
war,
oh
he
no.
chopped
The
all
chimney was chopped
yeah.
off right in 1933, was one of the Nazis immediately, because they had in mind that they're flying their planes. And you see, our house was part of the closing of the town. But what do you call it? It's where the water comes in, and we had this very big door that would be closed at night, so nobody could come in.
I thought the reason we had two doors, very large, you know, a Stammler when you are,
Yes,
and in the back, where years ago the chickens were, there was a large door, because in 1800 our house was from the in Germany, the post came, the people were riding in, like you see.
we have
sometimes-
closed doors, don't you see?
Yeah, no, they were riding in, I think in nice,
Nice wagons, nice.
wagons.
No, but I
Yeah,
think,
they came at night, that's where we had that large yard. They came
they
at
would,
night
they would
and
store there,
there,
that's right.
and they slept. Our house was at that time large enough, there were bedrooms, and they left again in the morning.
Yeah, but the thing is, you
But-
see, our house was part of the old city of Speyer.
It was.
Then it
yeah.
extended later, and the old city of Speyer was surrounded by water. So nobody could come in at night, and that's why they had the big doors and I don't know what you call, a canal going around the old city, because it was one of the, I don't know, festholds, whatever they
didn't
call it.
think
Sure.
in-
And that's why
in
we
our
had a
base.
tower on our house. And they had people
Oh,
stationed there. Now during World War I, our house was one of the observation stations, in case any planes came, because people would come to our cellar. We had a very unusual cellar
Oh,
with
very
the
big
walls
house.
that were about, I don't know, 2 yards thick, and the people would come. That was a shelter. When the airplanes came, and our house was part of this protection for the people, and people would come in our cellar.
Do you remember any of this?
I
Do you?
do.
Oh yes,
I only we went, but that was hard to get. We had to go out of a little bit from the house in order to enter the cellar. And that was kind of.
no, they came in through
No.
the doors where their wagons would come in with the horses,
Oh,
and that's the
that-
way they would come in,
Mm.
and they would run into the cellar when the planes came in World War One. We were actually,
That I don't
Oh,
remember.
sure.
We always
I
had-
was born down there.
Yeah.
Mother used to carry me, she used to tell me the story. She would carry me down to the cellar. I was born in 1916.
You were born in the cellar?
I was,
No.
I don't know, no, I was
Oh.
born in the house, but I was just an infant, and every night the planes would come, and they would go, we lived in the cellar. So when they
No.
bombed,
I must
Speyer.
tell you,
yeah,
Speyer was maybe once or twice. They wanted to bomb Ludwigshafen, but so we went next to the kitchen. There also was a high.
yeah, but this
Oh,
was not
wall.
for protection. The real protection was the
we
cellar.
never went in the cellar.
Oh yes, I remember.
No,
that we went in the
Well, I
cellar.
would remember.
Well,
Maybe.
maybe. Then another
Anyway,
thing, the house
we
was,
went during the end of the war. We went to a small place in the Odenwald, to Michelstadt, in order to be protected from the, and that was very,
that was
Really?
1918. And I remember the story when our father came from the war. He had grown a big beard,
and he
And-
came with a
and
bicycle.
he came with a bicycle, and I would yell to my mother, "Don't let the beggar in," because anyone that with a big beard was a beggar. But it was our father who had come back from the war. That was quite a story, and I was only a little girl. I was about 2 years old, because I'm born 1916. So that was the story. Now I think this is enough about.
All right, I want to ask you about your mother and your father and their relationship. Did they get along? Were they happy? Were they?
Well,
Oh, how I thought our father was in love with long distance, and he traveled on account of business.
was a salesman.
I sold the hub in Belgium, and
Mother
So,
ran the business. We had the business
yes.
right in the house, and
and well,
she worked very
yeah,
hard between keeping house and the business, and we had a lot of help. We had always 2 people. We had Chester and Anna. We had a maid and a whatever you call them, a butler. But it was a big house. It had to be cleaned all the time. And in the winter, we had to have the stoves. There was no central air.
We
Everything.
had a stove between one room and another. That was the
A real cattle stove. A beautiful
no,
one.
that burned all. It was started maybe in November and burned through. There was every year we didn't start that stove. We started in November and put every day twice the coals in.
Well, we had
Special
special coals,
kind, yeah.
anthracite, special coals.
Special coals. And that kept warm those 2 rooms, and the other rooms had to be,
The bedrooms, the water
Oh.
froze.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
where? We
Upstairs in the
slept up-
bedroom, the water
My
froze.
sister and I, we slept upstairs, and it was so cold. There, sometimes they made fire in the room, the bedroom, but you had the big wheels
Was very different.
and.
But
it
you
was-
get used to it.
Yeah,
It wasn't so really cold. It never was as cold that really New York is today.
well,
It used to go
Fire.
down to 30 degrees, 25 degrees, 20. Even the ice skating, I only remember that twice in my lifetime the Rhine froze.
froze.
And that was very
Fire.
unusual.
Had a very
Moderate
warm,
climate.
yeah, and it never got really very cold. As Susi just said, once or twice it got so cold that the Rhine, the river,
Froze.
froze.
Because we were able to walk across the Rhine because the ice, but
We
most of
could
the time
also-
it was just a little ice on it in the winter time.
We could, in a big lawn that they put water on, we could skate.
Eselsdam.
Eselsdam.
Eselsdam,
We
we
could-
would ice skate, and once in a while we had a lot of snow. We would take our sled and we would down the little hills we had.
Yeah.
We would come down the little hills, and it was really, we had a very happy childhood, actually.
And there was no problems between anybody, or neighbors and
Very friendly.
friends. Everybody was friendly,
Okay.
and it was no difference. But
Religion you had. The neighbors were very friendly. Except in the school, we were always told, you better keep quiet. You are Jewish and you better obey the teacher because we don't want any problems with you in the school.
I don't
And you
remember,
see the
not
school
in our
system,
school.
the school system is very different. You have only public school that goes up to the 8th grade. But
Yeah,
all the
but
other
then-
school is high school and you have to pay for it. And only the more privileged people who were well-to-do were able to go to the high school. The
But
school is-
only we went the first 4 years
we had
to
a
public
Jewish,
school.
we had a Jewish school.
Yeah, that
8
was
grades
during-
where I was in one room, a
no,
Jewish school.
4 years.
No, anybody who stayed longer than 4 years would have remained
Yeah,
there.
right.
Most people went to high school, but it was in one room, and we had at least 30 to 40 children in that room. And the
Because-
teacher had to teach first
Excuse
grade,
me,
second, third grade, fourth grade.
that was during the war, when you went to school,
I
at
went,
Zeppelin.
no, I had to
No.
I graduated the Jewish school. I remember, I
Fourth.
hated the teacher. He was
Krämer.
Herr Krämer, he was the world's worst teacher. Dr. Walbot was good, but he retired, and I hated the teacher. And we had some religious school in the morning for
Right.
1 hour,
The first thing
and
was
then
religion.
after that, but it was a Jewish school for the first 4 years, and then we went to the high school and you had to pay for it. Only for the people who could afford to pay. But fortunately, most of the Jewish people in Speyer were well-to-do, and they all sent their children to high school.
But it was not much.
Well, in comparison,
Was a small
I don't remember.
fee you
It
paid.
was about 100 marks a year or something
Yeah,
like
maybe
that. It
some-
was not too
something
expensive.
like
And you had to buy your own books, that's another thing.
that. Right.
Nothing was supplied from the government. We had to buy our own books in high school, and
Not
we
even
usually
the
would
pen.
buy it, nothing, no pens, no pencil. You had to buy it yourself, and you would buy from the older students. The books were used slightly, and you kept buying them and you reselling it. It was a very good system. And people wouldn't destroy books like they do today, and there was no damages in any way whatsoever. And the teachers were very respected. A teacher was a very
Yeah.
respected person, not you look down, we wouldn't dare to say one bad word against the teacher, and the parents would never say anything. The teacher is always right and the student is always wrong. We had no problems.
As young girls, if someone said to you, what do you think your future is going to be like? Everyone dreams. I mean, obviously, I don't think you would have ever imagined yourself going through what you went through.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Never
no.
remember going to the United
But here,
States.
but now, even when I grew up, the girls tried to go to the university and studied medicine, or studied law, or studied journalism. It was not a few did it, and most of them married.
Well, you
Yeah.
tried to,
Mm.
but you went to Brussels instead
Yeah,
of
right.
going to college. Girls
My
were not
father-
considered too much to go to college. They were considered to go to the, what was it called in Brussels? The
Pensionat.
pensionat. You
Ah,
had
the
to learn
finishing
languages,
school.
a finishing school to learn languages, in always a foreign country. Brussels was French, or Paris,
Geneva.
or Geneva. You were sent to a different country in order to perfect yourself in the language, because in school you always had 2 and 3 languages. We were not one language. You had French and you had English and naturally German, and then if you went to a different country in order to be more fluent in different languages. In Europe you've got to know more than one language.
Right.
Italian, only Spanish was not considered very much because Spain at that time was very poor. So they didn't consider that Spain will be really important, except for our uncle Max Weil, who went to Barcelona because he was very disappointed.
No, he went to Barcelona because during the
World War
First
One.
World War I, he was living before in Paris, and they took all his money, and then during the war, he stayed with us.
Because he couldn't bring his wife either. His wife
He
had to
was not
stay.
married.
Oh yes, he was married to
No.
Marie.
After that.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
maybe, that I don't remember. All I know is that he was alone, and after the war was over, he hated the Germans so much for what they did to
Right.
him, and the
Was
French,
the Germans
because
and
they
the
wouldn't,
French.
he had that Aunt Marie, the French woman, so they both immigrated to Spain, to Barcelona.
This was after the first
That's
World War?
after World
After
War
the
One.
World War.
But I don't think that they ever were able to become Spanish citizens. Even so, she remained French, and he remained
French,
German. This is the horrible story of all over Europe. You can never become a citizen of any of the countries you go to. You are only a temporary visitor, and you are mostly not even permitted to work there. The laws are terrible in Europe. The only place where you can become a citizen is the United States, and God bless America.
All right, before we end, we've been talking about the difference between German Jews and Polish Jews, and you were telling me about how as Germans you thought yourself German first, then Jewish.
That's right.
Can you tell me a
Yeah.
little
Well,
bit?
Well, we actually were supposed to be Germans. We were German citizens, born, if you were born German in Germany, you were German. And you never,
Being
being Jewish was just a religion, like being Catholic,
Protestant,
Lutheran,
that's right.
but it didn't mean,
It had nothing to do with the nationality. We never considered ourselves any different but Germans. And also, you weren't educated in Germany. All the education we had in school was that there was only Germany. The other countries were completely ignored, and all they would teach you was ancient history. We didn't learn anything about World War I when I went to school, or about the rights of citizens in Belgium or in France. Only thing, Deutschland, Deutschland über alles. And nobody else was considered anything better.
well, we learned some old Roman.
Old
Yeah.
Roman, but nothing what
But
happened
nothing
20 and 30 and 50 years
No.
before. That didn't exist. I didn't know anything about World War I. If I wouldn't have read up, I didn't even know that Germany won the war,
No,
lost the war, World War
And
I,
what
lost the
happened?
war, and what happened?
We had,
What happened to them? You weren't educated. You didn't know about the Weimar.
oh yes,
Very
very
little.
little.
Very little.
They didn't, well, through the Kaiser, it finished, that was finished after World War I, when Germany lost. There was no more monarchy. The emperor, he fled to Holland, and in Bavaria, the king,
There was
was
no more
no
king.
more king.
It was a president,
that
and
was right.
it was no more
In
monarchy.
Munich was no more monarchy.
That's right. They
After-
elected the president. Well, what was the first president? Ebert?
Eben.
Ebert was the first president after World War I, and there was no more Kaiser, no more
King.
king. It didn't exist anymore. And what happened to them, we don't
Yes,
even
in-
know.
Yeah, the
They
Kaiser.
survived.
They survived. They didn't kill like in Russia. The Kaiser went to Holland, and the king, I don't know,
We don't know.
what happened.
You weren't educated to that. You just didn't know anymore.
Good.
But we didn't,
But-
the Germans considered themselves not that they were defeated. They still were giving you the attitude like they won the war. But we didn't know. As children, we just didn't know what was going on.
We were occupied.
We were
We
occupied
were
by the
occupied by
French.
the French, and some other parts in Germany were occupied by the English, and
The English were occupied by, I didn't know that.
Köln,
But Speyer was always occupied by
by
the French. It's the only time I always lived through occupation. We had to be very careful when we wanted to go across the bridge, because we were the Pfalz, which is part of Bavaria.